Well, hi there everyone and welcome. I'm Kareth and I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. I make lots of meals in jars with freeze-dried food, and today's recipe is another meal in a jar, but this one is for pizza. I kind of challenged myself to try and develop a recipe that had all of the components of pizza in a jar, and I am happy to report that I accomplished it. And y'all, this is fantastic. I really hope you give it a try. I am going to put this in a quart-sized jar, but there are 4 different components to this, so you do need to keep these things separate, and I used little baggies to do that. So you've got your crust, your sauce, your cheese, and then your toppings. I'm making a supreme pizza, so I've got lots of vegetables, 2 kinds of meat, and then I found that pepperoni. It's a shelf-stable pepperoni. I found that near the pasta section in Walmart. Well, I had so much fun testing this recipe. I think I just wanted to know that it was a possibility for me. I mean, if I'm having to live off of my food stores and I have a hankering for pizza, it is possible to make pizza with shelf-stable food. So let me show you how I did it. Start with a quart-sized jar, and into that, at the bottom of the jar, we're going to add our crust ingredients. Today, I'm going to show you how to make just an all-purpose flour crust. I have made the gluten-free before, and I'll put those recipe notes in the description box. Now, baking powder is actually your leavening agent in this crust, but I do include some yeast, and that's not because it's going to make it rise, it's for flavor. There's a distinctive flavor that comes to a dough when you add yeast to it. So it's just how I like to incorporate that flavor. All right, now the first little baggie is for the sauce, and I used a snack size baggie. Space is a premium in this jar, so I suggest if you have a little snack size baggie, just put the sauce in there. For the cheese, I used a sandwich size baggie. It's a cup of our mozzarella, which is so delicious, and a tablespoon of Parmesan. And then seal that up. You kind of have to squeeze out the air, seal that up. All right, now for the toppings baggie, I'm going to include both our sausage crumbles and our ground beef. If y'all have watched my channel, y'all know I do not like the texture of those little pellets that it comes in. The nuggets, I don't like the texture. So I am going to put my meat into the blender and pulse it a couple times and get it smaller. I like the texture much better. And that's all you have to do is pulse it a couple times. I went ahead and put that little baggie in the jar just to make it easier to fill. There goes my meat. And then you can add whatever toppings you want. Since I was making a supreme, I thought I would put red and green bell peppers, sliced onions, and mushrooms. But you can put whatever kind you want. You could do a meat lovers. I've seen those shelf-stable packages of bacon that you could store alongside this. I have also made a pizza with sausage, green chilies, and pineapple. So whatever toppings you want, just put there in that baggie. Thrive Life has a great assortment of vegetables and fruit, and you can just go to town, and whatever kind of pizza you want, you can make. You kind of have to shove these baggies in there really good. It's a tight fit, but it does fit. And you might have to squeeze out that air. But yeah, it'll all fit in there, get you an oxygen absorber, and that is your quart-sized jar. Okay, so the idea here is you could store that on your pantry shelf alongside the pepperoni package or the bacon or whatever else you're going to use. Now, my pepperoni had an expiration date of 6 months out on it. So I'm going to note that on the lid of my pizza jar, put a use by date. But the idea is if you try this recipe and you like it, you can assemble several of these at once and have them ready on your shelf. And when you're hungry for pizza, get out your food processor. This is going to be ready in about half an hour. I'm sure you could make this other ways, but I've only ever made it in the food processor. This is just how I make my crust. So open up your jar and remove those 3 baggies and set them to the side. We'll prepare those in a minute. The order here does matter. You need to start with the crust because the timing is important. You'll see. All right, so empty the flour mixture into your food processor and pulse it a couple of times. All we're doing here really is mixing the salt and the yeast and the baking powder and all that in with the flour. And to the flour mixture, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of a good olive oil. I used an extra virgin olive oil. Flavor does matter here, so use a good one. And then add half a cup of water. And here is the procedure. You pulse this a couple of times, and then you let it go for 30 seconds. And what should happen is it should ball up and pull away from the sides. Now that didn't happen here. See, I've got dough on my sides. So it was too wet. The humidity matters, the weather matters. You can remedy that by adding 1 tablespoon at a time. And then let it go, and you'll see it will pull away from the sides and make a ball. Stop it at that point. So look, this is what happened. It pulled away from the sides. See, there's nothing on the sides, and it made a ball. That's when it's ready. Okay, and so if you have the same problem I did, you can add a tablespoon of flour at a time, and then you know it's ready when it gets to this point. And just put it in a bowl, kind of set it to the side, cover it up, and let it rest. All right, if you're going to put your pizza in the oven, go ahead and preheat your oven at this time. I'm going to make a skillet pizza, so I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'll show you. Now it's time to get the cheese ready. And all you have to do is empty that into a bowl and then add some water to it. And you're going to add somewhere between 4 and 6 tablespoons of water. I started with 4, and then I ended up adding 2 more later. Kind of depends on the weather. So just stir that up and make sure it's kind of flattened out and getting access to that water. You want all of those little pieces of cheese to rehydrate. So I covered mine up and just stuck it in the refrigerator for a bit and let it refresh. All right, time to make the toppings. Okay, if y'all have watched my channel, my videos, you know that I can't leave well enough alone. I'm not just gonna hydrate these things. I'm gonna saute them as well because I like the flavor of sauteed vegetables much better than I like the flavor of raw vegetables on my pizza. That's just what I like to do. You do not have to do this, but I highly recommend it. So go ahead and get some water in that skillet and start to rehydrate or refresh those vegetables and that meat. Get some heat on it. Those veggies and that meat will start to kind of come back to life. You'll start to smell something wonderful. Now, keep in mind, if you did not blend your meats, you're going to need additional water and a longer refresh time. And when most of that water has evaporated out, go ahead and add a tablespoon of olive oil in there and just stir it around. And now let it saute. Saute this mixture for probably 5 to 7 minutes, something like that. You will start to smell wonderful aromas in your kitchen. Now, if you're going to do a skillet pizza like I am, you need to go ahead and start preheating your skillet at this time. Now, I put it about to a medium, which is about a 5 on my stove. I ended up turning it down to a 4. But go ahead and get that preheated if you're going to make it in a skillet. Now it's time to make the sauce, and it's simple. All you have to do is add the sauce powder to some water and stir. That's it. The Thrive Life tomato sauce is fantastic. It doesn't need any seasoning adjustments. It's wonderful. and it's perfect for this pizza. All right, so just give that a stir, and whenever it's good and fragrant and you smell that those veggies have sauteed, then it's ready. You can turn that heat off and just let it sit. All right, let's check on our cheese and see how it's doing. I pulled that out of the fridge and just fluffed it up a little bit with my spoon, and then go ahead and feel it. I felt it, I tasted it, and it tastes amazing, but there was a little bit of a crunch to mine still, and you don't want that. You want it fully rehydrated. So I added a couple more tablespoons of water, stirred it really well. Just pop that back in the fridge and just let it finish rehydrating. All right, now it's time to roll out our pizza dough. Start by flouring your surface. I floured it generously, and then I also floured the top of the dough as well as my hands. You can start to kind of shape that dough. I roll it in flour, I flip it over. You just want to make sure it's not sticking on the bottom. And you can do this with your hands, but I think it's a little easier if you have a rolling pin. And then I roll from the center out and give it a quarter turn. That's just to make sure it's not sticking to my countertop. Flip it over, roll it, continue to roll it. And then I actually rolled mine out a little bit too thin, and it was a little too big for my skillet. I was trying to get it about the diameter of the bottom of my skillet, but it was a little too big. It would have been perfect for my pizza stone though. All right, when your skillet's preheated, then you're gonna need to put some oil in the bottom of it. You'll need a neutral flavored oil and something that can take high heat. So I used avocado oil. And this is gonna give you like that old Pizza Hut pan pizza vibe, okay? Remember how those came out to the table like in a screaming hot iron skillet and it had the oil on the bottom? That's kind of what this is like. Now, immediately it started bubbling up because it was good and hot, and I went ahead and poked it with a fork a little bit. But you see how my crust is coming up the sides there? Yeah, it was a little too big. Go ahead and cover that and let that cook for 4 minutes. And my stove was on a 4 out of 10. So you're gonna check the bottom. You should have it good and brown on the bottom, and flip it over. And see, when I flipped it, that's why it was a little bit awkward. The crust had to flip back up the other direction, so it made it a little bit fragile. Some of it broke off. But anyway, it's okay. Now it's time for toppings. So go ahead and add your sauce. I added that whole thing of sauce, and it's so delicious. I put toppings and then cheese. Do y'all do toppings and then cheese? Or do you do cheese and then toppings? Well, anyway, it's delicious whatever you do. Now's a good time to put that pepperoni on there. Now, if you were going to do that bacon, that shelf-stable bacon, I would put that in with the meats and the veggies and crisp that up. So look at the cheese. Isn't that gorgeous? It's ready. Cover your pizza with that delicious mozzarella cheese. And then I sprinkled some red pepper flakes on there. We like a little bit of heat. Go ahead and put your lid back on there, and you're going to steam this for 4 more minutes. It needs to cook for 4 more minutes. You're going to melt that cheese, heat up that pepperoni, and it will be ready at that point. When your cheese is melted, it is ready. Just look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Y'all, we made pizza out of a jar. Okay, but I wanted to take pictures, so I wanted to get a little browning on my crust and on my cheese. So I popped it in the oven, broiled it for 5 minutes, and it turned out great. Don't you think that's just so beautiful? I was really pleased with how it turned out. I had a little bit of basil left from my garden, and I put that on there. All right, and check out this cheese pull. I was so excited about that. Our mozzarella is fantastic. The crust is sturdy enough to hold all those toppings. I want to show you what the bottom of the crust looks like. It got some good color on there. See? It is so good. Okay, so there it is. Our meal in a jar supreme pizza. We did it. Making it in the skillet is easy and fast, but cooking it in the oven, it's great too. Whatever you prefer. You could put it on a pizza stone and bake it in the oven. I would par bake that crust for about 7 minutes, then put the toppings on, and then cook it for another 5 or 6. So here was my first bite, and I thought, oh my word, it's so good. See, the crust is sturdy enough to hold all those toppings. You can eat it like a regular piece of pizza. And here's my official taste test review. This is so delicious. And that's what I think about it. Okay, guys, that's it. There you have it. Supreme pizza as a meal in a jar. I had so much fun doing this video. I hope that shows. I'm going to include the full recipe in the description box below, as well as my shopping link. I appreciate so much when you give it a like and give me a comment. It really helps my channel to grow. It puts the video in front of other people who might not know about the freeze-dried foodie yet. So anyway, thanks y'all for doing that. I appreciate you. Y'all be blessed. And until next time, y'all take care and keep thriving.